Jake Morrison stood in front of the huge screen that showed stars and planets he had never seen before. His ship, called the UES Liberty, was flying through space toward something that would change everything for humans. The year was 2387, and humans had finally been invited to join something called the Galactic Council after many years of proving they were smart enough to be there. Jake wore the blue uniform of Earth's Space Navy and had short brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. He had been many things in his life before becoming a ship commander. He had taught children in schools, fought in wars, built machines, and even painted pictures in his free time. Most humans were like Jake in that way because they could do many different things well. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 different alien species, and each one was very good at one particular thing. The Zephyrians were amazing at math and could solve problems with numbers that would make human computers explode. The Corvoni could build machines and structures that lasted for thousands of years without breaking. The Thessarian Empire was the best at making plans for wars and battles. Each alien race had found one thing they were perfect at, and they stuck to it. Dr. Lisa Bennett walked over to Jake and showed him a tablet with information about all the alien races. Lisa was a scientist who studied alien life, and she had been reading about these species for months. She had long red hair and green eyes that always looked curious about everything around her. She pointed at the screen and shook her head with worry. Jake, you need to look at this, Lisa said while scrolling through pages of data. Every single species here has been put into one job category. They don't seem to understand that some beings can be good at more than one thing. Jake looked at the information and saw what Lisa meant. The Zephyrians only did math and science. The Corvani only built things. The Caesarians only planned military operations. No species seemed to do more than one type of work, and this made Jake feel uncomfortable because humans were different. The ship arrived at a huge space station that looked like a crystal flower floating in the darkness of space. The station was called the Grand Assembly Chamber, and it was where the Galactic Council met to make decisions about the galaxy. The building was made of some kind of clear material that bent light in ways that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Ambassador Carlos Rodriguez led the human team off their ship and onto the station. Carlos was an older man with gray hair and a serious face who had spent his whole life learning how to talk to people and make agreements. He had studied the alien customs for years and knew exactly how to behave so the aliens would not be offended. Aliens had prepared a welcome ceremony for the humans, and Jake could see representatives from all 12 species standing in a large circle. Each alien looked completely different from the others. Some were tall and thin, like walking trees. Others were short and round, like boulders with eyes. A few looked almost like humans, but with strange colored skin or extra arms. High Counselor Vexai stepped forward to speak to the humans. He belonged to the Thessarian Empire and looked like a giant lizard that walked on 2 legs. His skin was dark green with gold patterns, and his eyes were bright yellow. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together, but the translation devices made his words clear in English. Humans of the planet called Earth Vexai said in a formal tone that showed no emotion. We welcome you to our great civilization that has existed for millions of years. Your species shows promise in digging up minerals and making basic items. We have decided to give you work in Sector 7 where you will process metals and stones for our use. Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he kept his expression calm because he knew this was an important moment. The aliens' words made it sound like humans were only good for simple labor jobs like digging holes and carrying heavy things. Jake knew this was wrong because he had seen humans do amazing things like write beautiful music, solve complex problems, and create art that made people cry with joy. Carlos nodded politely to Vexai and said the right words of thanks that the aliens expected to hear, but Jake could see that all the humans in the group were upset by being treated like they were only useful for one basic type of work. Lisa whispered quietly to Jake, they think we're just another single-purpose species. They have no idea what humans are really capable of doing. Jake looked around at the crystal chamber and the alien representatives and realized that this was going to be much harder than anyone had expected. The aliens had spent millions of years believing that every species could only be good at one thing, and they were about to learn that humans were very different from anything they had ever encountered before. 3 months had passed since humans joined the Galactic Council, and things were not going well. Lieutenant Sam Parker stood on the dusty surface of a planet called Kepler-4 for to be watching huge machines dig holes in the ground to find metals and rare stones. The planet's sky was orange instead of blue, and 2 small suns hung in the air, making everything feel too hot and bright. Sam had sandy blonde hair and was young but already felt tired from months of doing the same boring work every day. Before coming to space, he had been a pilot, a teacher, and even played guitar in a band on weekends. Now the aliens expected him to only supervise mining equipment and never do anything else. "This is not what we signed up for," Sam said to his radio as he talked to other humans working on different planets. Every human settlement scattered across 12 star systems was reporting the same problem. The aliens only wanted humans to do simple jobs and refused to let them try anything more interesting or challenging. Dr. Amy Foster was having her own troubles at a research station orbiting a gas giant with purple clouds. Amy was a scientist who studied how to make plants grow in space, but every time she tried to submit her ideas to the alien research institutes, they sent her papers back with rejection notices. Amy had dark skin and kept her black hair in tight braids that floated around her head in the low gravity of the space station. She had 3 degrees from Earth universities and had developed new ways to grow food that could feed entire cities. But the aliens treated her like she was not smart enough to do real science. Captain Ryan Davis commanded a cargo ship called New Horizon that traveled between Council worlds carrying supplies and materials. Ryan was a big man with a thick beard, who had been a merchant sailor on Earth's oceans before becoming a space captain. He visited dozens of alien worlds every month and saw the same thing everywhere he went. "They've got us labeled as manual laborers, and they won't even consider that we might be capable of more," Ryan reported during a video call with other human captains. "I tried to suggest a better route for cargo deliveries that would save time and fuel, but they told me to stick to flying the ship and let the Thessarians handle navigation planning." The breaking point came when engineer Kate Sullivan finished her designs for new engines that could make spaceships travel faster between stars. Kate was brilliant with machines and had improved every piece of technology she had ever worked with. She had short curly brown hair and grease stains on her hands from working with engines all day. Kate sent her engine designs to the Corvini Technical Institute because the Corvini was supposed to be the best engineers in the galaxy. She waited for weeks to hear back from them and finally received a message that made her want to throw her computer across the room. Human-generated concepts lack the mathematical elegance required for advanced propulsion systems, the message said in cold formal language. "Please restrict your efforts to maintenance procedures and basic repairs. Do not attempt to create new designs as this is outside your species' capabilities." Kate stared at the message and felt her hands shake with anger. She had been building and improving engines since she was a teenager, and her designs were better than anything the Corvini had built in the last 100 years. But they would not even look at her work because she was human. Back on Earth, President Elena Vasquez called an emergency meeting of all the important human leaders. Elena was a strong woman with silver hair who had led Earth through difficult times before. She sat at the head of a long table in a room deep underground where the most important decisions about humanity's future were made. "We have a serious problem," Elena said, as reports came in from human colonies across the galaxy. "Our people are being treated like servants instead of equals. Every proposal we make gets dismissed and every innovation we suggest gets rejected." Admiral Peter Collins slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. Peter was an old soldier with scars on his face from battles fought long ago. His weathered hands had built ships and weapons that had defended Earth from enemies, and he was not used to being told that humans were not good enough. "They're treating us like we're some kind of primitive species that can only do simple work," Peter growled with anger in his voice. "Every time our people try to contribute something meaningful, they get told to go back to digging holes and carrying boxes." Dr. Helen Cross raised her hand to speak and the room became quiet. Helen was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology and had spent years studying how different species thought and behaved. She had calm gray eyes and spoke in a gentle voice that made people want to listen to her ideas. "I don't think they're being mean to us on purpose," Helen said, while looking at data on her tablet. "I've been studying their history and culture for months, and I think the problem is deeper than simple prejudice. Their entire civilization is built on the idea that every species can only be good at one thing." Helen stood up and walked to a large screen that showed pictures of all the different alien species. She pointed at each one as she explained what she had discovered about how their society worked. "Look at their history," Helen continued. "The Safarians have been doing only mathematics for millions of years. The Corvani have been doing only engineering for just as long. They literally cannot understand the concept of a species that can do multiple things well because they have never encountered anything like that before." The room fell silent as the human leaders realized what Helen was saying. The aliens were not trying to be cruel or dismissive. They simply had no way to understand that humans were different from every other species they had ever met. So what do we do about it? Alina asked while looking around the table at the faces of Earth's most important people. Helen smiled, and her eyes lit up with an idea that would change everything. We show them what human creativity can really accomplish. Dr. Alex Morgan spent most of his time alone in the ancient libraries of the Zephyrian homeworld, surrounded by glowing crystals that contained millions of years of alien history. Alex was a thin man with thick glasses who had always loved learning about old civilizations and how they developed over time. He came to the Zephyrian world to study Galactic Council history, but what he found there shocked him completely. The Zephyrian libraries were not like anything on Earth. Instead of books, the aliens stored information in crystal formations that projected holographic images and sounds directly into a person's mind. Alex had to wear a special helmet that translated the alien data into something his human brain could understand. "Commander Morrison, you need to see this immediately," Alex said into his communication device while his hands shook with excitement. He had been reading through old records for weeks and had discovered something that would change how humans understood the entire galaxy. Jake Morrison was on his ship dealing with reports from human colonies when Alex's urgent message came through. Jake could hear the excitement in Alex's voice and knew that the young scientist had found something important. "What did you discover, Alex?" Jake asked while sitting down at his command console. Around him, other crew members stopped their work to listen because everyone was desperate for good news after months of frustration. "The alien species haven't always been specialists," Alex said quickly while sending data files through space to Jake's ship. "I found historical records that go back millions of years, and they show something incredible. These species used to be just like humans. They used to do many different things and think in creative ways." The data files that Alex sent contained images and records from the early history of every alien species in the Galactic Council. Jake watched the holographic displays with growing amazement as he saw what the aliens had been like long ago. The ancient Zephyrians had not just been mathematicians, they had also been artists who created beautiful sculptures and musicians who composed songs that could make people feel deep emotions. The early Corvini had not just been engineers but also philosophers who wrote about the meaning of life and poets who described the beauty of distant stars. Dr. Lisa Bennett studied the psychological profiles that Alex had discovered, and her face grew pale as she realized what had happened to the alien species over millions of years. Lisa called Jake to her laboratory and showed him charts and graphs that told a disturbing story. "Jake, they eliminated creativity from their cultures on purpose," Lisa said while pointing at data that showed how each species had gradually changed. "Over time, look at these patterns. Each species slowly got rid of what they called inefficient diversity and focused only on perfecting one single skill. The records showed that millions of years ago the alien species had made a collective decision to specialize. They believed that having individuals who could do many different things was wasteful and inefficient. Instead, they wanted every member of their species to be perfect at one particular job. Over countless generations, the aliens had bred out creativity and adaptability from their populations. They had eliminated art, music, philosophy, and any kind of thinking that did not directly contribute to their chosen specialty. The result was species that could perform their designated function with incredible skill, but could no longer imagine new possibilities. Captain Susan Hayes was monitoring communications from the core worlds of the Galactic Council when she noticed strange patterns in the data streams. Susan had sharp blue eyes and red hair that she kept tied back in a practical ponytail. She had been a communications officer in Earth's Navy before joining the space exploration program. "We're seeing system failures across multiple sectors of Council space," Susan reported to Jake during their daily briefing. "Nothing catastrophic yet, but there's a pattern of gradual degradation in their technology and infrastructure." The more Jake and his team studied the alien civilization, the clearer the problem became. The Galactic Council had achieved incredible technological advancement, but they had paid a terrible price for their success. They had eliminated the very thing that made progress possible in the first place. Engineer Tony Rodriguez discovered the root cause of the system failures while studying Council maintenance records. Tony was a young man with dark hair and calloused hands who could fix any machine ever built. He had grown up taking apart old cars and putting them back together, just to see how they worked. Their technology is breaking down because they can no longer innovate solutions to new problems, Tony explained while showing Jake diagnostic reports from dozens of council facilities. They're maintainers, not creators. They can follow established procedures to keep existing systems running, but they can't adapt when something unexpected happens. The universe was constantly changing and presenting new challenges that required creative solutions. Stellar radiation patterns shifted over time. Asteroid impacts created unique damage that needed custom repairs. Even the gradual expansion of space itself created problems that had never existed before. The alien species had become so specialized that they could no longer think outside their designated roles. When a Corvani engineer encountered a problem that required mathematical insight, he could not ask a Zephyrian mathematician for help because their rigid social structure did not allow for collaboration between specialties. Jake realized that humans had stumbled into a galactic civilization that was slowly dying from its own success. The aliens had achieved perfection in their chosen fields, but had lost the ability to grow and adapt to new situations. "They're stuck," Jake said to his senior officers during a meeting in the ship's conference room. "They've optimized themselves into a corner and they don't even realize it because they can't conceive of any other way to think." Dr. Bennett pulled up star charts that showed the gradual decline of Council territory over the past 1,000 years. Entire systems had been abandoned when the technology needed to maintain them became too complex for the specialized alien minds to handle. "We're not just dealing with prejudice against humans," Lisa said while highlighting failed colonies and abandoned space stations. "We're looking at a civilization that has forgotten how to solve problems that don't fit into their predetermined categories." Jake stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. Somewhere out there were billions of aliens who had achieved incredible things but had lost the spark of creativity that made life worth living. And somehow humans would have to find a way to help them remember what they had forgotten. The crisis that would change everything began at a place called the Andromeda Gateway, which was one of the most important structures in the entire galaxy. The Gateway was a massive construction project that floated in space between 7 different star systems and controlled all the spaceship traffic that moved between them. The Gateway looked like a giant metal flower with petals that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Ships would fly through the spaces between the petals and get boosted to incredible speeds that let them travel between distant stars in just a few days, instead of years. But something was going wrong with the Gateway, and the problems were getting worse every day. Warning lights flashed red across control panels and computer screens showed error messages that no one could fix. The massive structure was starting to shake and vibrate in ways that made everyone nervous. The Corvani engineers worked day and night trying to fix the problems using their standard repair procedures. They followed instruction manuals that had been written thousands of years ago and tried every solution that had worked before, but each time they fixed one problem, 3 new problems appeared somewhere else in the system. Commander Morrison received the emergency briefing from Council High Command while his ship was traveling through a quiet sector of space. The message came through on the highest priority channels, which meant that something was seriously wrong. "They're asking for help from everyone," Jake told his crew while reading the desperate messages from the Gateway Control Center. "The Corvani can't figure out what's causing the failures, and the Zephyrians can't calculate a solution that works." Dr. Amy Foster assembled a team of humans who would work together to study the Gateway problem. Amy had been frustrated for months by the aliens' refusal to let her do real scientific work, but now she had a chance to show what humans could really accomplish. The human team that Amy put together would have seemed completely crazy to any alien observer. She had engineers working alongside artists, mathematicians collaborating with musicians, and military strategists brainstorming with philosophers. The mix of different types of thinking would have been impossible in council space where everyone stayed in their designated specialty. The breakthrough came from Dr. Gary Thompson, who was both a musician and a physicist and could see patterns that no one else noticed. Gary had long hair that he kept tied back in a ponytail and fingers that could play complex melodies on a piano or calculate quantum equations with equal skill. "Look at these failure patterns," Gary said, while playing the Gateway diagnostic data through audio speakers instead of just looking at numbers on a screen. "Listen to that rhythm. Those aren't random breakdowns. The whole structure is vibrating like a musical instrument that's badly out of tune." Gary had realized something that the specialized alien minds could never have discovered. The Gateway was not just a machine or a mathematical equation. It was a complex system that followed harmonic patterns similar to those found in symphonies and songs. The Corvani engineers saw the Gateway as an engineering problem and tried to fix it by replacing broken parts. The Zephyrian mathematicians saw it as a calculation problem and tried to solve it with more complex equations, but nobody had thought to treat the massive structure as a musical instrument that needed to be tuned properly. The resonance frequencies are fighting each other, Gary explained while showing the team visual displays of sound waves and vibration patterns. It's like having an entire orchestra where every musician is playing a different song at the same time. No wonder the whole thing is falling apart. The solution that Gary proposed was elegant and simple, but it required exactly the kind of interdisciplinary thinking that the aliens had eliminated from their cultures. Fixing the gateway would need engineers and musicians and mathematicians all working together in ways that violated every rule of council society. Captain Ryan Davis realized the political problem immediately when Amy explained what they needed to do. Ryan had been dealing with alien bureaucracy for months and knew how rigid their system was. "We can't just submit a report through official channels," Ryan said while pacing around the meeting room. "They won't understand how we reached this conclusion because it required exactly the kind of thinking they've trained themselves not to do." The human team faced an impossible choice. They had found the solution to save the gateway, but presenting it through proper council procedures would take months of review by different specialist committees. By then the gateway would have collapsed completely and 17 star systems would be cut off from the rest of galactic civilization. Jack Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. He gathered his senior officers and laid out a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane depending on how you looked at it. "We're going to fix the gateway ourselves," Jake announced while pulling up star charts that showed the route to the crisis zone. "We're not going to ask permission, and we're not going to follow their procedures. We're going to show them what human creativity can accomplish." Dr. Lisa Bennett looked worried about the political consequences of acting without council authorization. Lisa had been studying alien culture for months and knew that unauthorized action was one of the worst crimes in their society. "Jake, they'll see this as a direct challenge to their authority," Lisa warned while checking the legal codes that governed council space. "No single species has ever attempted repairs on a critical system without approval from multiple specialist committees." Jake smiled, and his eyes showed the kind of determination that had carried humans from caves to the stars. He had spent his whole life learning different skills and solving problems that other people said were impossible. "Lisa, that's exactly the point," Jake said while preparing orders for his crew. "Their authority is based on the idea that specialization is the only way to solve complex problems. It's time to prove them wrong." The decision was made and there was no turning back. 7 human ships would travel to the Andromeda Gateway and attempt the most audacious repair operation in galactic history. The 7 human ships appeared at the Andromeda Gateway like ghosts materializing from the darkness of space. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive structure grow larger on his view screen as they approached. The gateway was even more impressive up close, with its enormous metal petals stretching into the distance and millions of lights flickering across its surface. But Jake could see the problems immediately. Parts of the structure were shaking violently, and some sections had gone completely dark where the power systems had failed. Warning beacons flashed red against the starfield, and emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels with panicked reports from alien technicians. "Human vessels, you must withdraw immediately," came the stern voice of High Counselor Vex Tai, transmitted from the Thessarian command ship. The giant lizard's voice carried anger and disbelief that any species would dare approach such a critical system without permission. Jake activated his ship's communication system and broadcast his response on all frequencies so that every alien in the area could hear what he was about to say. His words would be remembered for generations as the moment when human creativity announced itself to the galaxy. "Respectfully, High Counselor," Jake said in a calm voice that carried absolute confidence, "specialization is exactly what got you into this mess." The reaction from the alien ships was immediate and hostile. Weapon systems powered up and shields activated as dozens of council vessels moved to surround the small human fleet. Jake could see Corvani battleships and Zephyrian cruisers taking defensive positions around the gateway. But Jake was not intimidated by the display of alien military power. He had studied the council's rules and procedures for months and knew that they would not actually attack without following proper protocols first. That gave him the time he needed to prove that humans could succeed where the specialists had failed. "All human ships begin the operation," Jake ordered while his crew worked frantically at their control stations. Around him the bridge buzzed with activity as engineers and technicians prepared for the most complex repair job any human had ever attempted. What happened next was a demonstration of human capability that shattered millions of years of galactic assumptions. The human fleet did not approach the gateway like engineers or mathematicians or strategists. They approached it like humans who could think in ways that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Engineer Kate Sullivan flew her small repair ship directly to the gateway's central hub while simultaneously painting patterns of colored light across the structure's hull. Kate was working as both an artist and an engineer at the same time, using her understanding of visual harmony to guide her technical repairs. The alien observers watched in complete confusion as Kate used light patterns to communicate with her repair teams while also recalibrating quantum field generators that kept the gateway stable. She was doing two completely different jobs at once, and doing both of them better than any specialist could have managed alone. Dr. Gary Thompson coordinated the entire repair operation like he was conducting a symphony orchestra. Gary stood in the command center of his ship, waving his hands in complex patterns while talking to 17 different repair teams scattered across the gateway's massive structure. The aliens could not understand how Gary was managing so many different operations simultaneously. In their society, each job required a separate specialist, and coordinating between specialists took hours of careful planning and formal procedures. But Gary was treating the gateway repair like a musical performance, where every team was an instrument that needed to play their part at exactly the right time. He used rhythmic communication protocols that made the alien observers feel dizzy with confusion because they had never seen anything like it before. The most shocking thing for the aliens was watching humans use intuition and improvisation to solve problems in real time. When standard solutions failed, the humans simply invented new ones on the spot. When established procedures proved inadequate, they wrote new procedures while they worked. Dr. Helen Cross monitored the alien communication channels and reported increasing panic among the council leadership. Helen sat in her laboratory aboard Jake's ship, listening to translated conversations between alien commanders who could not understand what they were witnessing. "They're calling our methods dangerous chaos and impossible unpredictability," Helen told Jake, while alien voices filled her speakers with confused chatter. "But Jake, the gateway resonance is stabilizing faster than their best projections said was possible." Tony Rodriguez worked inside the gateway's power core, fixing problems that the Corvani engineers had been struggling with for weeks. Tony moved through the mechanical systems like he was dancing, using tools in ways they were never designed for, and combining repair techniques from completely different fields of engineering. The aliens watched Tony weld broken circuits while simultaneously adjusting harmonic frequencies and recalibrating gravity generators. They could not comprehend how one person could have knowledge about so many different technical specialties. Sam Parker coordinated supply deliveries between the human ships while also analyzing structural stress patterns and composing poetry that helped his team stay calm during the dangerous work. The aliens had separate specialists for logistics, engineering analysis, and morale management, but Sam was doing all three jobs better than their specialists could. Captain Susan Hayes managed communication traffic between hundreds of work teams, while also calculating orbital mechanics and playing violin music that somehow helped synchronize the repair operations. The combination of technical skill and artistic expression was completely alien to the council observers. As the hours passed, the gateway's condition improved dramatically. The violent shaking stopped, and the dark sections began lighting up again as power systems came back online. The harmonic resonance that had been tearing the structure apart was replaced by a smooth, musical rhythm that felt peaceful and stable. The repair operation that council experts had predicted would take years, if it could be accomplished at all, was succeeding in less than one day. The human teams worked with a coordination and creativity that the work-specialized alien minds could not have imagined possible. High Counselor Vexai watched the impossible happening before his eyes and felt his understanding of reality crumble. Everything he had believed about how problems were solved and how societies should be organized was being proven wrong by these strange creatures from a small planet called Earth. The Andromeda Gateway hummed with perfect harmony as the last human repair team finished their work and returned to their ships. What had been a dying structure on the verge of catastrophic collapse was now functioning better than it had in thousands of years. The massive metal petals rotated smoothly and the control systems showed green lights across every status board. High Counselor Vexai stood in his command chamber staring at diagnostic reports that should have been impossible. The gateway was not just repaired but actually improved beyond its original specifications. The resonance frequencies were perfectly balanced and the power efficiency was higher than anything the Corvani engineers had ever achieved. 3 days after the repair operation, Vexai arrived aboard the UES Liberty in a small shuttle. The proud Thessarian leader who had dismissed humans as simple laborers now walked through the corridors of Jake's ship with something that humans recognized as wonder mixed with fear. Jake Morrison met Vexai in the ship's main conference room, along with Dr. Lisa Bennett and several other senior officers. The alien's usually perfect composure was completely gone, and his yellow eyes showed confusion and desperate curiosity. Commander Morrison, Vexai said in a voice that trembled slightly, "We require understanding of what occurred at the gateway. Our finest specialists have studied your repair methods for days and cannot comprehend how you accomplished what you did." The explanation session that followed lasted 14 hours and broke the mind of every council representative who attended. Jake and his team tried to explain the concept of interdisciplinary thinking to beings who had spent millions of years perfecting singular talents. Dr. Amy Foster used simple diagrams and examples to show how human minds could hold multiple types of knowledge simultaneously and apply insights from completely unrelated fields to solve complex problems. But the aliens could not grasp the basic concept. "You were saying," Vexai repeated slowly while his translator struggled with concepts that had no equivalent in his language, "that every human possesses multiple capabilities at the same time and can combine knowledge from different specialties to create solutions that do not exist in any established procedure." Lisa Bennett nodded patiently while showing the aliens brain scans and psychological profiles that demonstrated human cognitive flexibility. Lisa had prepared for this moment by gathering every piece of scientific evidence that proved human creativity was real and measurable. "That's not even the most remarkable part, High Counselor," Lisa said, while displaying images of human art, music, and literature alongside technical innovations. "The remarkable part is that we do our best work when we combine different ways of thinking. Our creativity comes from the intersection of diverse ideas." The revelation triggered the greatest philosophical crisis in galactic history. Species that had eliminated internal diversity for the sake of perfection suddenly faced the possibility that they had eliminated the very source of progress and growth. Dr. Gavi Thompson demonstrated human creativity by composing a piece of music that also functioned as a mathematical equation for optimizing quantum field harmonics. Gary played his composition on a portable keyboard, while alien observers watched numbers and sound waves dance together in patterns that served both artistic and practical purposes. The aliens had separate specialists for music and mathematics, and the idea that one person could create something that was both beautiful and functional at the same time was literally incomprehensible. To their specialized minds, young members of different alien species began arriving at human settlements, asking questions about creativity and interdisciplinary thinking. These curious individuals had heard rumors about the gateway repair and wanted to understand how humans accomplished impossible things. President Elena Vasquez addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council with words that would reshape interstellar civilization. Elena stood before representatives of 12 ancient species and spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who knew that history was changing. "We don't ask you to abandon your strengths," Elena said, while looking directly at each alien delegation. "We ask you to remember that strength comes not from limitation but from the courage to grow beyond what you thought possible." The transformation began slowly but gathered momentum as more aliens experimented with thinking outside their traditional roles. Zephyrian mathematicians started creating art that expressed mathematical concepts in visual form. Corvani engineers began writing poetry about the beauty of perfectly designed machines. Some of the older aliens resisted the changes and insisted that specialization was the only path to excellence. But younger generations embraced the human example and began rediscovering capabilities their species had abandoned millions of years ago. Human advisors found themselves teaching creativity workshops on dozens of alien worlds. Kate Sullivan showed Corvani engineers how artistic principles could improve their technical designs. Gary Thompson helped Zephyrian musicians understand how mathematical patterns could create more beautiful compositions. The council chambers were rebuilt to encourage collaboration between different specialties instead of keeping them separated. Mixed teams of humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system of rigid specialization. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and appointed as humanity's first Galactic Innovation Coordinator. His new office overlooked the rebuilt council chambers, where representatives from different species now sat together and shared ideas freely. "They're not becoming human," Jake told Lisa during one of their evening conversations while they watched Alien students practice interdisciplinary thinking exercises. They're becoming themselves again, the selves they were before they decided that growth was less important than perfection. The changes spread throughout the galaxy as alien worlds rediscovered the joy of learning new things and thinking in creative ways. Ancient art forms were revived and new technologies emerged from the combination of different specialists working together. Captain Ryan Davis reported that trade between star systems increased dramatically as species began creating products that combined their traditional strengths with new creative insights. The galaxy became more prosperous and dynamic than it had been for millions of years. Dr. Alex Morgan continued studying alien history and discovered that similar creative renaissances had occurred before but had always been suppressed by those who feared change. This time would be different because humans were there to encourage and protect the creative spark. The universe had not become more human that day at the Andromeda Gateway. It had simply remembered what it meant to dream of something better than what already existed, and in that remembering both humanity and their alien neighbors discovered that the greatest adventures were still ahead of them in a galaxy where creativity and imagination had been reborn.